Ladies and gentlemen, I have but one question for you. Why does Liquid never wear a shirt? Thank you.
What the fuck is your problem? We have an agenda here again, and I hope that freaking little intro didn't unhook these people into this podcast.
What the fuck does that mean? Unhook them into the podcast? English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
I'm speaking fucking English, the fucking goddamn red, white, and blue language. But the real agenda on hand is, we're here to talk about 1991's Hook.
Yes, dear viewers, as Elsie said, we are reviewing Hook today. Now, before we start into the review proper, we do need to address the issue of how is Hook connected to Halloween? Well, at the end of last episode, I gave you a list of 5 people connected with the movie Halloween. John Carpenter, Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasence, Charles Cypher, and Nick Castle. Well, the correct answer to who the connection is Nick Castle. At the time of Halloween, Nick Castle was a young actor. And in Halloween, he's the person you see walking around as Michael Myers with the white William Shatner mask on over his face the whole time. He's basically playing Michael Myers, though other people are credited as Michael Myers and he is credited as the Shape, because they just used a variety of different actors for the different time frames that Michael Myers was out there. Later on in his career, he became a writer, and he was a co-writer on Hook. So, there you go. We've gone from John Carpenter's Halloween to Steven Spielberg's 1991 Peter Pan sequel, Hook, starring Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman with Julia Roberts and Bob Hoskins. Susie, why don't you start us off with your analysis and review of the film?
Where do I begin? Well, as a little girl growing up, Peter Pan was one of my absolute favourite fantasy stories to listen to. It's the Disney movie I absolutely love. I love the story of Peter Pan, just the boy who wouldn't grow up. I think it's a fantastic story. Hook is a really interesting take on what would happen if Peter Pan actually did grow up, which in this movie it happened, with Robin Williams playing the title character of Peter Pan, and the movie just examining what happens if Peter Pan grows up, gets married, has kids, and forgets everything that happened to him when he was Peter Pan. Everything in this movie is just whimsical and so much fun. It's one of my all-time favourite movies, because it's just so family orientated and it's very nostalgic to people that grew up with the Peter Pan story, as a lot of us did. And the fact, as I explained in my top 5 favourite movies list, it's got a unique twist to it. And those are the movies I just really get into more. The fact it's a Steven Spielberg movie as well. I am a huge Steven Spielberg fan. I love Jurassic Park. I love E.T., everything about Steven Spielberg movies I love. I'll sound like a broken record when I'm saying these things, but the music in this movie is incredible. It's by the amazing John Williams, who, as we all know, is the world-famous movie composer that did such movie scores as Jurassic Park, E.T., Star Wars, Harry Potter, etc. And this is just one of those movie scores that stands out so much. The second you hear it, you recognise what it is. And the casting in this film, I think, is absolutely superb. Which brings up a few little interesting facts that I didn't know about until recently when I watched the movie again. Robin Williams doing Peter Pan is the perfect actor to play it. And what a lot of people may not really know is that Tom Hanks was originally meant to be playing Peter Pan. I would be biased because he is one of my favourite actors, but it just wouldn't work. Tom Hanks being the amazing actor that he is, it would not work. Robin Williams just has that childlike quality down to a T. It's just perfect. And also, now this is a funny thing. As I said, Hook is one of my absolute favourite films from growing up. I didn't realise until about 3 or 4 years ago that it was Dustin Hoffman that played Hook. And I'm not really a big fan of Dustin Hoffman. And that really changed my opinion of him when I realised that it was actually him that played Hook. So it's just that, okay, I actually really love the character of Hook in this movie. And for me not to realise it is one of those actors I don't really like, he must be a fucking good actor. Just another quick little fun fact, if you recall in the flashback portion of this film, when they're looking back at Wendy and Peter's history, Gwyneth Paltrow appears in this. This is her very first film. It's an amazing startup because it's one of those movies you don't really associate with a big star like Gwyneth Paltrow, this being her first film, but it's just a little fun fact there. Anyway, I absolutely adore Hook. I love the casting, I love the story, I love the music, I love the cinematography, I love the fact that the Nostalgia Critic reviewed this movie and he still loves it. And I love the fact that we were given the meme, My Jack. Hook is one of my all-time favourite films. I could talk for hours about what I love, what I think could be different in it. I just think it's a phenomenal film. And that's my take on Hook.
Thank you very much, Susie. Elsie, why don't you pick it up from there and give us your ever insightful analysis?
All I had to say was, this was an amazing fucking film here. Steven Spielberg honestly made one of the best unofficial sequels to a story ever made. And honestly, it is the greatest work of fanfic that I have ever seen in my life. And trust me, people, I've seen a lot of fanfic. I mean, Steven Spielberg's direction on this film was amazing. And honestly, the casting of this film was perfect. I mean, Robin frickin' Williams as Peter Pan. I mean, who else could play Peter Pan but Robin Williams? And yes, like the Blockbuster chick said, it was originally supposed to be Tom Hanks. I am so glad they didn't cast him as Peter Pan because Robin Williams was perfect for this role. But I personally think the most impressive performance in this film is from Dustin Hoffman. Every time I see an actor that I know in a role, I see the actor. That's all I see. I mean, I see Dustin Hoffman, I see Robin Williams, etc., etc. Honestly, watching this film, I didn't even realize it was Dustin Hoffman until about 30 minutes into his role. It's just an unbelievable fantasy film. And honestly, just watch this thing and enjoy it. I mean, yes, it's a Disney film, and I'm not a Disney guy. You know, you can take that cutesy stuff, and thank God Paramount probably stepped in and fucking toned them down 3 notches. But honestly, what can I say? But this film is just a great unofficial sequel.
As for me, this film, I gotta admit a bias to this. This is a film my dad showed me when I was really young. Shortly after it came out, I was maybe 6, 7 at the time. And I just can never get around the fact that I do love this film. It's one of those movies that I grew up with. And people talk about not knowing it was Dustin Hoffman until 20 minutes in. I watch this movie now, I can't tell it's Dustin Hoffman. I truly, truly can't. Even when the wig comes off, I'm still like, that's Dustin Hoffman? It's one of those film roles that he just totally fell into. And setting him aside, Bob Hoskins. Bob Hoskins. Anybody look at Smee in this movie and tell me, you know what? That's fucking Eddie Valiant from Roger Rabbit. That's Eddie Valiant. Nope. Couldn't have told you that. That's the level of actor Bob Hoskins is. You never, ever were ever going to be able to tell where he came from. To Susie's point about Tom Hanks not getting the role, I gotta disagree on this. I do think Tom Hanks could have pulled it off. There's a reason he was offered this role. Because 3 years prior, in 1988, he got a role doing something very, very similar called Big, where he was playing a kid in an adult's body. What better proof that he could play an adult Peter Pan than that particular film? But as has been said, Robin Williams is excellent in this role. I think it's one of the great unsung roles of his career. when Robin Williams does a serious role, it's also so subdued. It's so subdued that it's sometimes easy to forget how manic and insane he can get. And, I mean, Julia Roberts is Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell. I'm not going to say she did the greatest job, but you know what? She doesn't hurt the film. And Maggie Smith as Grandma Wendy is excellent. Gwyneth Paltrow's in there for no particular reason. It was her first role. Nobody knew who she was at the time. The rest of the cast do a pretty good job. And if we're going to talk about fun facts, another really cool fact is the actor who played Rufio went on to be the voice of Prince Zuko from Avatar The Last Airbender. Not the movie, the cartoon show. So, interesting little fact there. A lot of the other actors in this are, sometimes they're sneaky good, other ones are about as cutesy as you can get with the Lost Boys. And I will admit, some of these special effects get a little cheesy, sometimes to the point to where they could be kind of offensive, like the big kid who at the end is basically dubbed the new Peter Pan. Him and doing the rolling down the ramp thing, that was cheesy as all hell. But the thing is, this is the one thing about Disney I will give. They do cheesy and schmaltzy better than anyone else. And in this film, it works, even with a good blend of seriousness. The music, why do I even need to say the music is excellent? I just have two words, John Williams. But another thing I really need to mention that's really, really good about this film is the costuming, particularly with the pirates. The costumes, I think when you sit down and look at Hook, and then look at the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, the more recent pirate films, I think you can see some of the influences. Because the pirates just look so good in Hook. Hook himself looks ornate, ostentatious, loud, whatever fancy word you want to use. He's there, and everyone knows he's the captain, and everyone else looks kind of mangly and kind of scruffy. And it all just works, especially when you strike the contrast between the pirates of Hook's crew, even Hook himself, and Peter before he realizes he's Peter Pan. When he's coming down there in a business suit, all dressed up nice, looking ready to go to a lawsuit since the character Robin Williams plays is a lawyer. When you look at that and compare it to the rest of the costuming with the pirates, the way they clash, it just shows the difference between Neverland and the real world. And it's the same way with all the colors in the film. Even at day, the colors in the real world look very drab, very formal, not out of place, but very normal. And when you go to Neverland, they get brighter at times, or darker at times. They go to more extremes, which I thought was a pretty good touch. And yeah, the story's great. It's Hook wants Pan, and if Peter Pan's not there to get, he's going to go after Peter Pan's kids. It works. It even gives Peter Pan a backstory, which is somewhat believable. So, yeah, this was a very, very good film.
Yeah, one thing I just have to point out, Michael, is the fact that, yes, even though I love Tom Hanks, he wouldn't have fitted in with the world of Hook. Robin Williams just slotted right into the character of Peter Pan just perfectly, and I just can't see Tom playing Peter Pan. Yes, he did the movies big, and he was the voice of Woody in Toy Story, and he has that childlike quality, but I can't see him playing Peter Pan in that. It just doesn't fit. So you just have to put that out there. I think Robin Williams was perfect.
Well, look, when you look at the success and the great movie that Big is, you understand why they would want to have Tom Hanks play that type of character, especially that early in his career. I don't disagree with you that he may not have fit in quite the way Robin Williams did. But at the same time, I can't fault their logic for it. Because I think this is really the difference between Robin Williams playing a kid and Tom Hanks playing a kid. Hanks played a kid as a kid. He really played that. He played the role of being a kid in an adult's body to a T. All the subtleties, all the nuance, all the naivete, all of that came with it. And the thing about Robin Williams' performance, and the thing that makes it work so well here, is the fact that Robin Williams isn't playing a kid in an adult's body. He's playing an adult who's forgotten how to be a kid. And he's trying to regain his inner childhood. And his ability to have fun and have an imagination. That was the entire point to all that crap he was doing with the Lost Boys and the imaginary food and all that. It was about reawakening those little aspects of childhood that we so often lose as we grow up and become less innocent.
Personally, I could not agree more. Honestly, I think this whole film is a metaphor for a midlife crisis. I mean, the Peter Pan character is obviously a grown adult with adult responsibilities, and he has to come back and he has to get to know his inner child again so that he can relate to his children and save his relationship with his children. I think that's a thing that a lot of parents don't do, is that once they become to a certain age, they get so wound up in their careers and making the money and supporting the children financially that they forget that they have to live in the child's lives and be a part of that life. And I think that's what this whole film was. It's learning to be a child again so you can relate to your children and not just be the menacing adult. There's a subplot in the film you might not have noticed, that Captain Hook demanded that all the clocks be broken and stopped. Now, personally, I think that's representing when you get to a certain age, time feels like it stands still. Because remember, in the original Peter Pan story, Captain Hook was the representation of the parents, the older discipliners. Now the wheel has turned, and now Robin Williams is now the pirate. And how more fitting is it that in the story he's a lawyer? I mean, what is a modern day pirate than a fucking lawyer?
What's more of a modern day pirate than a lawyer, LC? Have you looked at stockbrokers recently? Kind of the pirates of the decade now. Lawyers kind of got thrown off.
Well, you know, they're going to use stockbrokers when they make the remake of this film in about 2 years. So we'll see that when it comes.
Watch, Jason Statham will be Peter Pan. That'll be fucking adorable.
Yeah, but he looks so cute in those tights.
Only you would say that, LC.
Now, this is one of those movies you cannot touch with a barge pole because it is, well, I wouldn't say perfect. It does have its problems, but it is amazing.
And something that we haven't touched on quite as much, Susie and I quite clearly brought it up in our individual analysis, but that score, I have to say, I think it's one of the great underrated scores in all of cinema.
Oh, definitely. Can't agree more with that. John Williams' music is iconic in so many movies that we know. Jaws, for God's sake. 2 notes, and we know it's Jaws. Harry Potter, Star Wars, E.T., Jurassic Park, as I've gone over and over and over about. It's just so iconic, and it brings out the fantasy element in that movie just so well. He is just so good at bringing out the different aspects of the movie that he's composing the music for, and just the whimsy, the fantasy. You put the soundtrack to Hook on, you close your eyes, and you can just picture Neverland. You can picture Peter Pan, you can picture Tinkerbell, you can picture the pirates, the crocodile, everything. That's just how good that music fits in with this. Even though it's a very well-known relationship John Williams and Steven Spielberg have in a lot of the classic movies, you just can't get over the fact it's John fucking Williams. It's so good.
I couldn't agree with you more, Susie. Especially that scene where Jack was playing baseball with all the pirates and Smee was that weird pitcher. Robin Williams was supposed to steal Hook's hook, but got distracted watching his son. The music there, at times seems in contrast with the other music, yet fits so well. It's just a really great scene, I think.
Oh, it's an absolutely fantastic scene. But the thing is, you're watching it as a straight story. I've looked at that scene and saw it in a different light, because if you look at what the story is and kind of like the subplot there and the insight of what this whole film is, Captain Hook took over as the father role for Jack. And if you remember correctly, in the beginning of this film all started with Peter missing his son's baseball game. And honestly, how I looked at that scene was, it was basically Peter is watching his son play baseball with Captain Hook, and that basically is symbolism for what a father would have to do if he was watching his son grow up with like a stepfather. So that's what really touched me in this scene, is that Robin Williams as Peter Pan had to actually sit there now and live his son's life through the eyes of the stepfather. And I think that's why he got distracted, and that's why he couldn't keep his focus on what he was going there to do.
Elsie, I can see that, but at the same time, I can't see it. I definitely see where you're coming from with Peter realizing he's losing his son to his mortal enemy. And from a certain perspective, I can definitely understand that as being a metaphor for losing your son to a stepfather, particularly a stepfather you don't get along with at all. It was less about Hook and more about the fact that he was just losing his son. That he was looking at it as, I'm here, I have a great relationship with my wife, I even have a good relationship with my daughter, who he hadn't lost at any point through the movie. His daughter still had faith in him.
Yeah, but one thing you got to keep in mind there is his daughter was very young. His son was just about to the point where I'm guessing he's about 10 to 12. He's just getting ready to hit into that puberty stage where the rebellion comes in. And at that point of his life where he wants his father's acceptance. He wants to show his father what he can do and accept him. And he felt like he was being neglected in the process. Yes, he had the nice home, he had the money, he had all the stuff he wanted, but at the end of the day, all he wanted was his father's love. And the biggest insult in the world to this child was his father guaranteed at the beginning of this film he was going to make the game. And what did he do? He sent his assistant with a video camera.
I definitely see that from Jack's perspective. I'm saying from Peter's perspective, this is also just my opinion as what would be torturous to me if I was a father. And if I was a father, realizing that I had everything in place to have a great relationship with my son. Because also remember, that first scene where he guaranteed he would make his son's baseball game was while he was at his daughter's play. So, in that regards, it could be that he's got a fine relationship with his daughter. He has a great relationship with his wife. He has everything in place to have a great relationship with his son, but he's always missing it. Whether he feels it's justified or not, whether it legitimately is justified or not, he's missing out on things with his son. And to start losing your son to anyone who would show you affection, even if it's affection the son is extremely aware comes from the hatred of the father less than love for the son. And Hook made it very clear through the entire thing. He's not there because he cares about Jack. He's there to make them hate Peter. And to have that relationship destroyed because of that, to see his son let the relationship be destroyed because he does truly wish to hate his father that much, I think that's a bit more torturous than seeing someone else get those moments. Alright, so while we're talking about scenes that we are reading such big metaphors in, let's talk about some of the iconic moments or what we think are some of the best scenes in this film. Susie, why don't you start us off?
This scene always stuck out to me because it was so poignant and so moving, and it's the scene where Peter has just got acquainted again with the Lost Boys, and Rufio is being all rebellious and just saying he's not Peter Pan, and anybody that believes he is an idiot, basically. And then it's the point where all the Lost Boys go inside with Rufio, and the one boy that's left is the smallest of the group. He's a really little boy. He goes right up into Peter's face. He looks directly in his eyes. He looks on his face. And he's just got this curious look and everything. And it's just so moving and everything. It's just this little boy can see past the old man that he's looking at. And he just goes,
"Oh, there you are, Peter."
That always gets a lump in my throat. I just think that is so poignant, and it's amazing that you can see past the person in front of you and then just see who you were looking for. It almost reminds me of Miracle on 34th Street in that way that people don't believe it's Santa Claus and blah 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 blah. But I just find that scene so touching and everything, that this little boy believes without a shadow of a doubt that this was Peter Pan. And it's just it's so moving. I love it.
All right, LC, how about you?
If I'm going to say my favorite scene, it would probably actually have to be the dinner scene. When Peter is sitting at dinner with the Lost Boys, and there's nothing but empty plates. And all the kids are chowing down, they're grabbing stuff, they're eating, they're joking around. And Peter's just looking at everything going, there's nothing there. What are you doing? What are you eating? What are you throwing? There's nothing there. There's nothing there. And at one point, as the insults kind of keep going back and forth, and as Peter gets into that riffing match with Rufio, and they start throwing back the insults. This is Street Corner, your mother's a joke kind of style. And in that moment, he got his childhood back, and as he's getting more and more into the insults, he picks up the spoon, scoops it into the bowl, and then flings it, and the food becomes real for him, because finally he found that inner child that he had to find to become Peter Pan again. I just love that scene. That just showed the character opening his mind up, and it was a plot point and a character development at the same time.
Now, those were two excellent choices, and to be honest, LC, the one you picked, with the exception, almost was my pick. Almost! And I would even say extend that a little further to the end of the food fight where Rufio chucks the coconut at Robin Williams, and Robin Williams gets a sword in his hand and cuts the coconut in half. Because really at that point he realizes, I'm Peter Pan! That's the point where his mind where he realizes it's all real and he has to deal with it. I think that's great, but there's one scene I like a lot better. That scene is the fight scene at the end. And it's a two-parter for me. As you're going through all this big battle between the pirates and the Lost Boys, and you got a bunch of really cheesy, Disney, very kid stuff going on. By the way, as cheesy and kidsy as a lot of that stuff is, it fits in perfectly with what would be a battle between Lost Boys who never grew up and pirates. It fits perfectly. But through that battle, you eventually see Hook fighting Rufio. Like, pure sword battle the whole way through. And that's a pretty decent fight. That's a good fight scene. Not one of the best ever. We'll get to that some other time, but it's a pretty good fight. And then, spoilers, Rufio gets impaled and dies. And at that point, I think that's almost like a reality check for this movie. Because so often we see people getting hurt in very comedic ways. We see the Julia Roberts Tinkerbell fall down supposedly dead, and then get back up again after a bit of clapping. We see so many things that kind of desensitize us to the concept of death in Netherland. Then we see one of the main supporting characters just get killed off. And looking at that it brings a whole new level of seriousness to the final fight between Peter Pan and Hook. And that fight scene, I'm sorry, that delivers. It's excellent. Going back and forth, good bits of references to the original. And even at the end where Peter Pan is leaving Hook alone, alive in his stupidity of getting beaten by this giant kid, even at the end, that's still fitting with what Peter was about. He didn't go there to kill Hook, and killing Hook would have been what Hook wanted. Hook wanted to die in battle with Peter Pan, because Peter Pan had been this pest to him for so long. And just the way it ends is also very, very poignant, and very, very good in reference to the rest of the Peter Pan mythos. Even a nice reference to the Disney version of Peter Pan. And I like it as a fight scene. I like it with its little bits of poignant moments that fit in character, even though a lot of people will point out, well, it's stupid you're leaving him alive. Why are you not killing this person? It's like, that's just not what Peter's about. And it's exactly what Hook wants anyway. So that's got to be the scene for me.
And yes, Mikkel, that was very insightful. But let's get to our ratings for this film. So, Miss Blockbuster Chick, how would you rate this epic fantasy tale?
Well, this being one of my all-time favourite movies, I am going to have to go the whole way and give this a 10 out of 10. This is a phenomenal movie, full of fantasy and adventure and whimsy and everything. All the classic elements of a Disney movie that I absolutely adore. And it's got Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman, for God's sake. It's just incredible.
Alright, how about you, Elsie?
Well, if I have to give this film a rating, as a standalone film, I'm going to have to give it a 9. It was an epic fantasy tale with great cinematography, action-packed, a great story, and honestly one of the best works of fanfic I've ever seen. But just for the simple fact that it's a Disney film, I'm giving it a 5.
So your answer is 9. Gotcha.
No, it's a 5. Disney cannot be more than a 5.
You can't admit you like a Disney movie.
This is what you call itty Disney magic.
And this is what I call, I'm the host, shut your mouth. You sticking with the 9 you gave it originally. Alright guys, I can't quite give it that high a rating. Like I said, it's a film where there's a lot of nostalgia involved for me. I've seen this film a lot, and some of the performances in it are brilliant. But I think the fact that we barely touched on Tinkerbell, one of the key characters in the film, and even the subplot romance that was supposed to be going on between her and Peter. I mean, there are some elements to the story that are goofy. Like I said, a lot of the fight stuff is very cheesy, even if it's fitting in with what we're seeing with the fights. And it is really a great film to watch, but there are little bits of holes in it. Such holes that I can't quite put it on the same level as Halloween. And even then, Halloween didn't get a 10 out of 10 for me. So for me, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. And our aggregate score, much like Halloween, will be a 9 out of 10. Great film. Go pick it up if you love fantasy, if you love yourself some Robin Williams, if you love Dustin Hoffman or Bob Hoskins. Because those two, my God.
They steal the show.
They are epic actors in this. It's a great film. Go pick it up. Right the fuck now. Alright. Now, while Hook was fun, I'm afraid we must sail away from Neverland and find our way to the next film. Now, who would be our captain on this? Well, it's time for you to find out. And there are a ton of connections we can make in this film. I mean, we have the 4 top characters, like we said before. Bob Hoskins, Julia Roberts, Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman, Spielberg directing, John Williams on music, Gwyneth Paltrow in her first movie role ever. There's so much we can go with. But I'm going to screw with people now. So, here are some of the connections you need to try and figure out. Okay, so your options are Robin Williams, Bob Hoskins, Phil Collins, Carrie Fisher, and Glenn Close. Alright, we'll see you next time.